Episode 6. Echoes of Betrayal. The Nevada desert unfurled beneath a sky bruised with the deep indigo of early evening. The last rays of the setting sun painting the horizon in streaks of crimson and gold, fleeting farewell to the day that lingered like a memory on the edge of night. The air had cooled, carrying the crisp bite of the approaching darkness as it swept across the golden sands, stirring the sagebrush into a soft rustle that whispered secrets to the wind, a language only the desert understood. The dry creek bed, where Jacob Kane and his companions had emerged from the smuggler's tunnel, lay quiet now, silver ribbon of water reflecting the emerging stars. A fragile mirror in the vast wilderness that stretched endlessly in all directions. The sand beneath their feet was damp from the tunnel's seepage, cool against their worn boots, each grain glinting with the faint luminescence of the night sky. A mosaic of light and shadow that seemed to pulse with the rhythm of their survival. Jacob stood at the water's edge, his boots sinking slightly into the soft ground. The leather creaking with the weight of his stance, his silver-streaked black hair tousled by the breeze. Damp with the sweat of their escape, strands clinging. To his weathered face, where scars traced the map of a life hard-lived, his shoulder bearing the twin scars of recent grazes, one from the gulch, the other from the canyon, naked beneath his worn cotton shirt. The fabric torn at the sleeve where a bullet had kissed his flesh. The threads frayed and stained with the day's exertions. The pain was a dull throb, a constant companion that pulsed with every breath, but his Winchester rifle rested comfortably in his hands. Its polished barrel cooled to the touch despite the heat of the day, its weight a steadying force in the chaos that had become their existence. Nita sat nearby, her back pressed against a smooth boulder that rose from the creek bed like a sentinel. Her legs stretched out before her, the bandage on her thigh now stained with a faint pink where fresh blood had seeped through, a testament to the wounds sustained in the trading post ambush. Her traditional Navajo dress, tattered and dust-streaked from days of flight, clung to her slender frame, the red and brown patterns faded but still vibrant against the desert's monochrome, a symbol of her heritage enduring through hardship. Her dark eyes, sharp and unyielding, burned with a fire that refused to dim. Fixed on the ledger she held in her lap, the rolled parchment cradled like a sacred relic. The document, its edges worn from handling, contained the names of Harrington, Voss, and Caldwell tycoons whose greed had fueled Ward's atrocities. Their signatures a blood stain on the pages of history, on the weight of its secrets pressed heavily on her shoulders, a burden she carried with the grace of a warrior. Her hand rested on the dagger at her waist, its hilt worn smooth by her grip, a familiar comfort in the uncertainty that loomed ahead. While her other hand traced the faded ink, her fingers lingering on the names, as if willing them to reveal more than their damning truth. The Navajo women gathered around a small fire Eli had kindled with dry twigs and sagebrush, its flames casting a warm glow against the cool night. The crackle of burning wood a soft counterpoint to the desert's silence, a beacon of life in the vast emptiness. Shima tended the fire, her silver hair glinting like spun moonlight in the flickering light. Each strand a thread of wisdom woven into the tapestry of her being, a testament to the years she had endured. Her small bow, its wood darkened by years of use and polished by the oils of her hands, leaned against a rock within reach, the string taut with the promise of defense, a silent guardian in the gathering dusk. Her face, etched with the lines of decades, carried a calm that belied the tension in her grip on a stick she used to stoke the flames, her eyes scanning the shadows with the vigilance of a mother protecting her flock. Awi trailed close to Shima, her arms cradling her newborn with a tenderness that belied the harshness of their surroundings. The child's soft coos, a fragile melody that pierced the desert's silence, a lullaby of innocence amid the danger. They fled. The baby's tiny face, nestled against her chest, was peaceful, its eyes closed in a slumber that seemed a miracle, its breath a gentle rise and fall that mirrored the rhythm of her steps, a heartbeat of hope. Tala and Kiona flanked the group, their daggers sheathed, but their postures alert. Their lithe forms cutting through the air like shadows cast by the fire's dance. Their gazes sharp as they watched the perimeter, every rustle a potential threat. The scout, still bound to a nearby stake driven into the sand, slumped in exhaustion, his face gaunt with the toll of captivity. His earlier bravado replaced by the hollow stare of a man facing his end, his wrists chafed red where the leather strap bit into his flesh, his boots dragging in the dust, leaving uneven tracks that marked his despair. "We can't stay here," Jacob said, his voice a low rumble that broke the quiet, the words scraping against his parched throat like sandpaper, a rasp that carried the weight of their journey and the urgency of their plight. He turned from the water's edge, his boots shifting in the sand, the rifle shifting slightly in his hands as he met the eyes of his companions. "The riders will regroup, and those tycoons, Harrington, Voss. Caldwell won't stop until the ledger's ash, until every trace of their crimes is erased. We need to head East Virginia City. A judge there might hear us, someone beyond their silver-lined pockets." Nita looked up, her eyes meeting his across the fire's glow, a spark of agreement flickering within their depths, a shared resolve that bridged the distance between them. "It's a week's ride, maybe more with my leg holding us back," she replied, her tone steady, despite the pain that tightened her voice. The words measured as she shifted her weight against the boulder. "But Lila knows a route through the salt flats, then the foothills where the pines offer cover. We'll need supplies, food, water, horses to make it." Lila nodded, her young face taut with the resolve that mirrored her sister's. The ledger's weight evident in the slight slump of her shoulders. "There's a trading caravan 2 days north," she added, her voice soft but firm, a thread of steel beneath the gentleness as she adjusted the parchment within her dress. "They owe me a favor from when I saved their leader's son from a flash flood 2 summers ago. We can barter for food and fresh horses enough to get us started." Eli shifted where he crouched by the fire, his patched coat blending with the shadows, the fabric catching the light as he moved, his shotgun resting across his knees with a casual readiness that belied the tension in his frame. "I know those. Flat, treacherous ground, white as bone, and hard as iron," he said, his voice cutting through the planning, a raspy drawl that carried the weight of experience. "But I've got a map, cached near my old place, a homestead burned out by railroad men last year. We can detour their first cut a day off if we move fast." The group agreed, the plan taking shape as the fire burned low, its embers glowing like tiny stars against the night, the crackle fading into a soft hiss. But a tension lingered, a whisper of doubt in the scout's shifting gaze, his eyes darting toward the shadows as if seeking an escape. A shadow in Eli's guarded demeanor as he avoided meeting Jacob's stare, a hint of something unspoken in the lines of his face as they prepared to move, gathering their meager belongings and dousing the fire with sand. A soft thud sounded in the darkness, a knife, embedding itself in the sand near Jacob's boot with a dull thunk, the blade quivering. As it stood upright, its hilt glinting in the starlight. He spun, rifle raised, the stock pressing against his shoulder, his finger hovering over the trigger, the metal cool against his skin, his green eyes narrowing as he tracked the source. Figures emerged from the night, 3 men, their faces obscured by scarves that fluttered in the breeze, their guns drawn, the barrels glinting with a deadly promise. "Hand over the ledger," the leader rasped, his voice cold and devoid of mercy. The words slicing through the tension like a blade, his fingers steady on the trigger. "Or we take it to end your lives right here." Jacob fired without hesitation, the shot booming across the creek with a roar that shattered the silence, the muzzle flash illuminating his clenched jaw as the bullet struck the leader square in the chest, dropping him with a heavy thud, his body crumpling into the sand. Nita drew her dagger in an instant, lunging at a second man with a grace born of instinct, her blade finding his arm with a wet slice. Drawing a cry as he fired wildly, the bullet whizzing past her ear with a high-pitched whine, embedding itself in a rock behind. Tala and Kiona sprang into action, their daggers flashing in the dim light. A blur of motion as they took down the third man in a synchronized strike, air blades finding flesh, with a precision that left no room for mercy. His gasp cut short as he fell. But the attack was a diversion of feint to draw their attention. More riders appeared, their hoofbeats thundering across the desert, a drumbeat of war that reverberated through the ground, their silhouettes dark against the starlit sky. The group scattered for cover among the rocks, the night erupting in flashes. of gunfire, the air thick with the acrid scent of gunpowder and the sharp tang of fear. "We're outnumbered," Nita shouted, pulling Jacob behind a boulder as bullets ricocheted off the stone, sending shards flying, her hand gripping his with a desperation that belied her strength, her breath ragged with the effort. Jacob's mind raced, the chaos, a storm he fought to navigate, his training as a bounty hunter kicking in with a clarity born of necessity. "Hold them off, Eli. Take the women and the ledger to the salt flats," he said. His voice a command cut through the din, his eyes locking with Eli's for a moment, searching for trust. "I'll cover you, buy you time," Eli hesitated, his hand tightening on the shotgun, his eyes flickering with a shadow of doubt. But he nodded, his jaw set with resolve. "Follow me, stay low," he ordered, guiding Shima, Awi with her newborn Tala, Kiona, and Lila through the rocks, their forms vanishing into the darkness like ghosts fleeing a storm. Jacob and Nita returned fire, each shot a desperate bid. For time, the night a battlefield of light and shadow, the muzzle flashes illuminating their grim determination. A rider broke through the line, charging toward Eli's group with a cry, his horse's hooves pounding the sand, but Shima's arrow struck true, piercing his chest with a soft whistle, halting him mid-charge, his body slumping as the horse veered off. The distraction allowed the others to vanish into the night, leaving Jacob and Nita to face the remaining attackers, their numbers thinning, but their resolve unbroken. A bullet grazed Jacob's side, a hot sting that drew a grunt from his lips, the pain a sharp counterpoint to the adrenaline coursing through his veins. He slumped against Nita, his weight heavy in her arms. She supported him, her strength unwavering, her eyes fierce with a fire that burned brighter than the gunfire. Her hands steady as she dragged him toward a narrow crevice in the rock face, the opening barely wide enough for their bodies. "We're not done yet," she said, her voice a blade of steel, her breath warm against his ear as she pulled him into the shadows. The night swallowing them whole, the echoes of pursuit fading into the distance. They emerged hours later, the stars their only guide. The crevice spitting them out onto a rocky outcrop overlooking the salt flats. The ground glistening white under the moonlight, a stark contrast to the dark silhouettes of the foothills beyond. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint tang of salt and the promise of refuge, but the tension remained, a taut wire stretched between them. Eli and the women waited by the flat's edge, their faces pale in the lunar glow, the ledger clutched. In Leela's hands, her fingers trembling as she held it close. "The scout's gone," she whispered, her voice breaking with the weight of the revelation, her eyes darting to the shadows as if expecting his return. "He cut his bonds during the fight, used a rock to saw through the leather." Jacob's jaw tightened, the betrayal stinging like a fresh wound. The realization that their trust had been misplaced a bitter pill to swallow. "He'll lead them to us," he said, his voice a low growl, the anger simmering beneath his calm exterior. "Straight to the flats, then the foothills. We move now, push for the pines by dawn, lose them in the trees." As they trekked across the salt flats, the ground crunching beneath their boots, the white expanse stretching endlessly under the moon, Nita's hand found Jacob's, fingers intertwining, a silent promise amid the uncertainty that cloaked them. The desert whispered with echoes of treachery. The scouts escape a shadow that loomed larger with each step, but their bond grew stronger. A flame that burned brighter against the night, a light that guided them through the darkness toward an uncertain dawn. Episode 6 End. Bonds in the Breach. Episode 6 Thrusts Jacob and Nita into a deadly ambush by the tycoons' hired guns, testing their trust as the scouts' betrayal exposes their trail. Can their love endure the relentless hunt? And what secrets does the scout carry? Tune in for episode 7 to reveal the scout's fate. If you're hooked on this saga, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications too. Catch every thrilling moment. Share your theories on the traitor in the comments below.